A beloved grandmother is found murdered in her garage.
Her purse was sitting on the first step, and she wasn't breathing.
Her lips and face were very blue.
A mysterious woman is caught fleeing the scene of the crime.
The lady was wearing all black. I just know something's not right.
She just said, I didn't do anything. You kind of get that gut, something happened.
The victim's loved ones suspect a love triangle was involved.
My mother had the worst taste in men.
She just kind of kept that pattern pretty much all of our life.
And the investigation leads to a romantic rival willing to snuff out the competition by any means necessary.
She was obsessed.
She put spells on them to try to split them up.
Can't have a murder in the state of Mississippi without a little voodoo or hoodoo in it.
Leaving a wake of destruction in her path.
I was going to be her perfect scapegoat.
Anybody that goes 9 months planning somebody's murder is not sorry.
I just don't want people to think I'm this monster for someone else.
February 11th, 2020. For small business owners Trent and Stephanie Rogers, it's another busy Tuesday morning in Baldwin, Mississippi. One of the employees at their grocery store, 63-year-old Pamela Britt, isn't feeling well, so they tell her to take a break.
She thought her blood pressure was messed up, and she was gonna go home and maybe see if she could just take a nap and rest a minute.
But when more than an hour passes without hearing from Pam, they begin to get worried.
Around 12 o'clock, 12:05, Stephanie had told me, Pam didn't make it back, which that's not like Pam. She come up and talked to me and asked if I would call her, and I tried to call her and I couldn't get an answer.
Trent said, what do you think I need to do? I said, I don't feel good about it. I think you should go check on her.
Since Pam lives only a few minutes away, they decide to pay her a visit.
I go to the house and I get out and look around. I knock on the door, and then I didn't get an answer. And then I decided I was going to check and see if maybe there was a door unlocked. I get to the back of the house to open the door, and there was a lady there that opened the door.
To Trent's surprise, it's a woman he doesn't recognize from their small town.
The lady was wearing all black. She had black pants, black shirt, and she had a black coat with a hood on it, and she was wearing a black headband. She was real pale, and she was sweaty. It looked like she had been doing a lot of work. I just know something's not right.
Since Pamela lives so close to the store, Trent is familiar with the comings and goings around her house and most people in town. This woman, however, appears to be a total stranger.
I asked her where Pam was at, and she said that Pam doesn't live here. At first, I thought I had the wrong house, and I called Stephanie and asked her if that was the house that I was supposed to be at.
He described the house and the location, and I said, yes, that is where she's living now. My mind was just racing. I really didn't know what was going on. I was trying to put it all together. I just knew I just had to get there. When I drove up, I immediately take my phone out and I dial 911. I give him the address.
A few minutes later, the woman in black leaves the house and begins walking up the road. Trent follows her, And as responding officer Nicola Ward approaches, the woman suddenly flees into a nearby field.
I saw Trent, and Trent was pointing to the field, and I saw a suspect down there. So I pulled up, got out of my car, and went down the hill. I was attempting to get her to stop. I notified, I'm Officer Ward with the police department. I need to speak with you. Stop. And she continued to walk. I told her to stop again in a pretty hefty voice, and she started to pick up speed. I had to kind of run a little bit to catch up with her. I was getting closer, and I told her to stop, and she just said, I didn't do anything. You kind of get that gut when somebody automatically tells you you didn't do anything, something happened. So I just took her down.
After restraining the mysterious woman, officers try to question her.
I wasn't for sure if she had any weapons on her or anything. I tried to ask her who she was. She wouldn't say anything. I asked her why she was there. She wouldn't say anything.
One of the officers stays with the woman, while the other returns to Pam's house with Trent and Stephanie.
We did not make entry into the house at that particular point in time. The door was locked.
Trent tells them we need to get in this house. And we eventually end up finding Pam in the garage. She had her keys in her hand. Her purse was sitting on the first step, and she wasn't breathing. She didn't have a pulse. It just looked very natural, like she just had some sort of medical episode and just fell over dead.
But the mystery woman's presence suggests another scenario.
I knew that somebody dressed all in black coming out of someone else's house shouldn't be happening. And then it was like, we got to figure out, why is this happening?
Pamela Britt was born in the nearby city of West Point in 1957. Baldwin is a small town, so she is a familiar face to everyone, including police.
My mother had 4 brothers and 1 sister. She was the middle child.
My mother pretty much stayed in West Point until about 16 years old. She married my father, and she got pregnant with me when she was 17 and then had me a month after she turned 18. I don't think they were married maybe a year.
Although her first marriage failed, Pam didn't give up on love. She continued to search for Mr. Right, floating in and out of relationships for many years.
When I was about 10 years old, she met my brother and sister's father. They stayed together probably about 5 years, maybe. We moved after they separated.
Me and my brother and sister grew up in Nettleton. We had a good childhood. She did what she could to support us.
After her children had grown up and started families of their own, in 2018, Pam moved to Baldwin to be closer to her daughters and make a fresh start. She found work at the Rogers grocery store.
I met Pam through her daughter, Robin. I knew she had a background in working at, grocery stores, convenience stores, retail stores. That's all she had done her whole life. Pam could just relate to anybody. She was just a people person.
Outside of work, Pam spent most of her time with her 7 grandchildren.
Being a grandmother was the best thing to her in the world. She pretty much helped raise my kids with me. She had them all the time. They were always at her house on the weekends if, They loved going over there.
It didn't take long for Pam to take up with a new beau. In 2018, she began dating a handsome 45-year-old man named David Scribner.
My mother told me he was a good guy. She didn't really say much. I can only remember having a few conversations with her about him during this whole time they were dating. She kind of was doing her own thing, had finally got in a house and was doing really good for herself. I was happy about that.
But Pam's newfound contentment has come to a crashing halt now that her body has been discovered in her garage. Detectives take a closer look at the crime scene.
There's no obvious sign of any sort of blunt force trauma. There's no gunshot wounds that are apparent or anything like that. What I did notice was marks on her wrist where it looked like something thin had been tied around her wrist. She had what looked like some electrical burn marks on her chest. And her lips and face were very blue, consistent with being without oxygen for some time. So we had a pretty good idea that asphyxiation was the reason. The woman, all dressed in black, had a large multicolored handbag that she was carrying at the time that she was detained, and started going through what items the lady had in the bag.
What they find is beyond incriminating.
There was a pretty stout plastic that you wrap around a pallet of stuff to keep it from coming apart. It was a roll of that. A taser was also in her bag.
There was a dark navy pillowcase and some plastic wrap and some zip ties.
We figured the pillowcase was put over her head and saran wrapped around her face where she could not breathe no more.
So the first thing we're trying to do is identify who the woman in black is that we've got in the back of a patrol car and try to figure out what the motive is for her to do what she has done to Pam.
Coming up, investigators get a possible lead on their mystery woman.
I asked if she knew of anybody that Pam might have been having any kind of trouble with, and she said David's ex.
Leading to a potential stalker.
He put a security camera up and caught footage of a woman in a coat. It never shows her face.
While evidence is being collected at Pam Britt's home, the first officers on the scene take their suspect to police headquarters.
She didn't want to speak, so she was placed in jail, and she sat in jail.
The woman in black remains a mystery. But back at the crime scene, detectives find a potential lead among Pam's belongings.
Pam's phone was in her purse, and I looked through her call log and saw that she had been on the phone with Shawnie Scribner, who is also a person that I know from growing up in Nettleton, Mississippi. So I called her, and that's when we found out that Pam had been dating her son, David Scribner, from Nettleton. I asked Shawnie if she knew of anybody that Pam might have been having any kind of trouble with or things of that nature, and she said, yeah, David's ex, Yvonne. She felt like Yvonne had been poking around their house on a couple of occasions, and that she thought that maybe that's who that was.
Investigators must determine if Yvonne was jealous and decided to get rid of the competition. To learn more about Pam's relationship with David, police contact her daughter.
Me and my husband were at the eye clinic. When I got home, I had a phone call from the Baldwin Police Department. I called the police, and they said they would be out to our house. And they showed up, and they told me that my mom had passed. I didn't understand. Everything gets a little foggy after that.
When I first heard that my mother was murdered, I was at work. My sister calls me and is in a panic, just screaming that she's dead, she's dead. I think I just sat, just at work, just kind of stunned. It was a shock.
I really didn't know who could do something like that.
Robin can't tell police anything about Yvonne, but she isn't surprised to learn her mother's death might be linked to her latest boyfriend.
My mother had the worst taste in men. Absolute worst.
She says Pam rushed into the relationship with David after a string of family tragedies.
My brother had just lost his son in July. He had drowned in a swimming pool. Then we turned around and had my uncle, who was my mother's brother, pass away in November.
I knew my mother was hurting from all of this, so she got on a dating website, and she found this guy, David Scribner.
Robin explains to detectives that things took an alarming turn soon after Pam and David started dating, 1 month before her murder.
My mother had said that she had gotten her car one time and there was a pile of rocks that was placed in weird positioning in her floorboard. And this seemed to be happening at David's home in Nettleton. They put a security camera up and caught footage of a woman in a coat. It never shows her face, but you could see her go into the car and reaching under and getting something out from under the car. She didn't know what was going on with it. She had called my sister, telling her about it.
David's mother suspected that it may be David's upset ex, Yvonne. She says when this happened in January, she didn't think the matter was serious enough to bring to police.
Yvonne worked at a restaurant where the waitresses wear all black, and this particular person in the video was also wearing all black. So they logically thought it was probably Yvonne.
In a town as small as Baldwin, Detective Young remembers Yvonne from his childhood. However, when he pays a visit to the jail where the woman in black is being held and refusing to speak, Detective Young does not recognize her.
So everything leaned towards Yvonne, but we knew the woman we had in custody was not Yvonne.
Now, detectives believe the woman in custody may be the woman in the video. Detectives plan to use fingerprints to ID the woman in black and track down Yvonne to be certain that she wasn't involved.
The detective, he had contacted me and he said, Yvonne, we need to talk. And I said, about what? He said, about this murder. And I said, that has nothing to do with me.
A few hours have passed in the murder investigation of Pamela Britt, and the woman in black is still not talking. To make certain that the woman they have in custody is not Yvonne, Detective Young utilizes his small-town connections to bring her in for an interview.
I got a message on Facebook, and at first I wouldn't go in. He said, Yvonne, if you really thought I was gonna arrest you, you'd be in handcuffs right now. And I said, that has nothing to do with me. I was at work. I know for a fact I was at work. I have proof.
When Detective Young asks Yvonne about her relationship with David, she tells them it ended in 2013.
The first 5 years me and David were together, everything was great, wonderful. I was madly in love, what I thought.
According to Yvonne, it was a messy breakup, which led to a custody battle over their children.
My girls had been taken from me in 2018. I was fighting in the court system trying to get them back.
The court ruled to leave the children with David. Then, in 2019, she had to deal with another complication, David's new girlfriend. But it wasn't Pamela Britt. Yvonne says it was a woman named Shawnie Vel Young.
I had got a message on Facebook from someone named Shawnie. I didn't have a clue who she was. And then one of my kids had told me that's Daddy's girlfriend. I think Shawnie's main reason was to fill me out, to make sure that I didn't have feelings for David and that I didn't want David back, and I let her know real quick, I'm done with him.
Detectives consider the possibility that Shawnie might have had an axe to grind with Pam as well. After confirming her alibi, detectives conclude that Yvonne was not involved in Pamela's murder. Before they can talk to David about the relationship, he contacts them.
I got a Facebook message from David Scribner, and he asked that I call him as soon as I could, so I did.
David tells detectives that he's heard they have someone in custody for Pam's murder. Like Yvonne, he believes it might be his ex-girlfriend, Shawnie.
He explained to me that Shawnie had been staying with her cousin, Leanne Mann. She reached out to David, and on that particular morning had left sometime between 3 and 6 a.m. in her car under the pretense of going to work at a restaurant local in Corinth, Mississippi, but at this particular time had not returned. And when Leanne started doing some investigating, she had not been at work at all that day.
According to David, Shawnie had never gotten over their breakup, which occurred just prior to his meeting Pam in 2018. He says this led to an unhealthy obsession.
He said she was continuously talking with Leanne about David and Pam's relationship.
It's now 24 hours into the investigation, and detectives ask Leanne to come in and give a statement. She says she's already heard about Pam's murder, and her friend Beth Reed accompanies her to the station. Shawnie Vel Young grew up in Tupelo, Mississippi. Though she was one of 3 sisters, Shawnie was always the center of attention.
We were never close growing up.
She was very spoiled. Me and Shawnie and my other sister, we done pageants, and she didn't play well with others. She always thought she was entitled to something more.
Shawnie was pretty mean back then. My brother and my sister both. Shawnie would beat them and blame them for stuff that she had done cruel.
When Shawnie grew up, she moved to New York and got married. When she returned in 2017, she was a single mother with children by 3 different men. And according to Leanne and Beth, she'd already found her next provider.
She told me that she had met David online, that David had bought her a bus ticket to come and visit. David, for whatever reason, felt obligated maybe to help her.
They say Shawnie fell hopelessly in love. But by 2019, David had moved on.
David had lost interest in Shawnie. He started dating Pamela Britt.
Leanne and Beth say Shawnie wasn't willing to accept defeat.
Shawnie showed up at Leanne's house about on or little bit before Thanksgiving 2019. It was not supposed to be a long-term thing at all. Shawnie had other plans. Shawnie told us that she had come back because David wanted her to. They were in love and they were going to be together.
Her take was he was in love with her and not Pam. Said that he didn't want Pam.
Coming up, Shawnie's obsession turns deadly.
I feel like she was patterning her as a hunter would a buck deer.
And investigators find evidence of a murder plot.
When you look at everything on paper, it's just a wow factor that everything fell like it did.
Leanne Mann, the cousin of suspect Shawnie Vel Young, tells investigators that as soon as Shawnie moved in with her, she began fixating on David and his new girlfriend.
David. There was not a day that would go by that it wasn't all about him.
I had been friends with Leanne for 30 years. I didn't like that Shawnie just come in on Leanne. I was very creeped out by Shawnie's presence. From the very second I first met her, she was obsessed. She never spoke of her children. She never spoke of her husband. She never spoke of anything outside of David and Pam.
Leanne and Beth say that Shawnie wanted to be closer to David, who lived just an hour away in Nettleton. Leanne says Shawnie even recruited her own children in her attempts to win David back.
Her kids, her sons, had got in contact, and if I recall, said Shawnie died because of cancer. Just to see how David would react.
When her ploys to gain David's attention were unsuccessful, Shawnie resorted to extreme measures.
Leanne kind of told her that I'd read tarot cards and did things like that. She had asked me several times if I would do something to break Pam and David up. And it was love spells. It was darker type magic.
She wanted him to think about her 24/7, and that was what she was trying to do. You can't have a murder in the state of Mississippi without a little voodoo or hoodoo in it.
I would not do it. I told her from the jump that I didn't want any part of it. I said I don't work with that kind of magic. Shawnie wanted David for herself at all cost. She did not see anything outside of David. She was completely consumed with this man.
Leanne says that's when Shawnie decided to change her tactics.
Shawnie would take my car and would not come home. I didn't know where she was going. Shawnie would be off doing things that I didn't know.
Looking back now, I feel like she was stalking Pam. Just being gone all of those hours, and looking back now, I can remember Shawnie holding her phone and showing me Pam's Facebook page. That gave Shawnie everything she needed to find Pam, what she drives, follow her home. Now she knows where she lives.
She said that she had put a tracker made out of a cell phone that she had taped up on Pam's car so she would know where Pam was at all times.
I feel like she was patterning her as a hunter would a buck deer.
Leanne says she was becoming increasingly concerned about Shawnie's behavior. On the morning of February 11th, the day Pam was murdered, she says she'd finally had enough and reached out to David online.
Shawnie had took my car to work that morning, and she'd not got home yet. I figured if she was anywhere, she was out trying to find him.
Later that afternoon, Leanne went to the police station to report her car stolen.
One of the patrol officers found the car at Fish Lake later that evening. When we ran the VIN number, it came back to Leanne Mann. We took all the items out of the vehicle. What we did find of interest was a driver's license that belonged to Leanne Mann and bus tickets with Leanne's name on it. So, I mean, it's pretty apparent that Shawnie had used Leanne's driver's license to purchase tickets back to Indiana in Leanne's name. We kind of felt like at that point we knew exactly who we had and exactly what the motive was. The woman in black is Shawnie Young.
They also find an ominous journal entry in Shawnie's handwriting.
The note said that she was going to make this happen. How today was the day, and that she was going to do away with Pam. She wanted David, intended to have him.
Hours after Pamela Britt was found murdered in her garage, Baldwin police are putting together a solid case against her boyfriend's ex, Shawnie Vel Young.
Before Leanne, before Beth, Baldwin Police Department had a suspect for murder with no motive. When Leanne and Beth left after their statements, Baldwin Police Department had a murder with a suspect and a motive. The motive seemed to be jealousy, seemed to be lust, obsession, crazy love.
But when investigators take a look at Shawnie's social media pages, they're surprised by what they find.
So they probably ended up actually beating end of 2017 or early 2018 and started spending some time together.
At the moment, I thought Shawnie and David dated for months. After knowing the case, it came to 10 to 12 days, maybe at the most, that Shawnie and David ever spent time together.
It's not like, there was any rings put on it. By 2019, she was fixated on David and Pam's relationship all day, every day. David, he was not interested in her.
Detectives obtain a search warrant for Shawnie's electronic devices and find further evidence she plotted out Pam's death.
The search history on her phones was, how to kill somebody in different ways. How long does it take somebody to die, and how do you do away with a body? Can you boil a body away? Just crazy things.
When you look at everything on paper, it's just a wow factor that everything felt like it did.
One of the phones confiscated from Shawnie appears to be the tracking device Leanne mentioned. Investigators assume this was placed under the car in the surveillance footage.
It was plastic wrapped and taped up, which is the one that we believe she put underneath the car when it was parked down at David Scribner's house, and how she tracked her to where she lived at.
Investigators theorize that there was a reason Shawnie tried to disguise her identity.
We feel like the suspect was dressing in black to represent Yvonne on camera. She was wanting Yvonne to go down for this murder charge.
I'd never met her, but obviously she had met me because she knew what I looked like, how I dressed, how I fixed my hair. Shawnie was setting the stage for everything that was going to happen to be all my fault anyway. I was going to be her perfect scapegoat. If she hadn't been caught, I would have been arrested.
When the fingerprint testing comes back, police are able to positively identify the woman in black as Shawnie Vel Young. That evening, Shawnie is charged with the murder of Pamela Britt.
I think with the phone that she put on the car, she tracked Pam to work and then from work to home. And she set up her plan to kill Pam.
I believe that Shawnie had waited outside the house until Pam came home. She took the pillowcase that she had in her bag, and as Pam was walking up the steps to go into the house and started to unlock the door, I think she put that pillowcase over her head, jerked her off the steps, and tased her, zip-tied her up, and wrapped plastic around her head until she suffocated to death. Evil. That one was evil.
But when Shawnie breaks her silence, her story is far from expected.
You do know the guy's trying to put this puzzle together, right?
Oh my God, the rest of my life, I'm protecting myself.
While Shawnie Vel Young is being held on a $5 million bond, prosecutors begin preparing their case for trial.
In law enforcement, it's not what you know, it's what you can show, what you can prove.
She was caught coming out of the garage area where Pam's body was found. In the bag that she had with her coming out were items that were used to create death in the manner that Pam had died, and that was by asphyxiation. There was a taser that matched the marks on Pam's chest and shoulder where she had been tased. She had zip ties that had been around Pam's wrist. We had the history of the obsession that she had with David, just solidifying the motive about why she wanted Pam out of the picture. So the evidence was mounted up there. We charge her with capital murder, which in the state of Mississippi, if you're found guilty of capital murder, the death penalty is on the table.
In the month following Pamela's murder, Shawnie has refused to make any kind of statement. But in March 2020, due to uncertainties surrounding the COVID pandemic, she breaks her silence.
When we sat down, the Lee County Correction Center was just evil, just sitting in a room across the table. She would cry 1 minute, holler 1 minute, talk 1 minute, go back to crying.
Just get yourself under control.
According to Shawnie, she wasn't the one obsessed with losing David. Pam was, and she wanted to get rid of Shawnie.
I've never hurt anybody in my whole life. Never. Not one person. One time I defend myself, this happened.
Take a deep breath. You want to tell me about it?
She wanted to meet because she caught me and him was screwing around. She was afraid she was losing him in her talk. And she attacked me. I just don't want people to think I'm this monster because I'm not. I'm really not. I struggle with this every day.
She tried to claim self-defense and that sort of thing, but There was absolutely zero evidence on any of the 4 phones that Shawnie had. There was zero evidence on the phone that Pam had that they had ever had any kind of conversation at all.
I'm going to talk to the lawyer now because I don't think I'll for the rest of my life protecting myself.
Over the next few years, while Shawnie remains imprisoned, her defense attorneys try to keep the case from going to court. They claim she is unfit to stand trial, but in 2023, she is ruled competent. Rather than risk a death sentence, Shawnie agrees to plead guilty to second-degree murder.
Anybody that goes 9 months planning somebody's murder is not sorry. She's sorry she got caught. She wasn't sorry for what she done. Second-degree murder felt like a slap in my face.
They gave her 27 years. She took a plea deal that she should not have been given, in my opinion.
I don't think it's fair that Shawnie was able to take my mother away from her kids, her grandkids, her life, and then she still has the opportunity to walk out of that prison.
Pam was a very, very good person, and what happened to her, she does not deserve. And the sentence that this lady got is not enough. It's absolutely ridiculous.
I don't want my mother remembered as the woman that got in between somebody and a guy. She was just loving and just funny.
I want people to know that my mom, she was a good person. She was a good person, and she loved her family. She had the biggest, beautiful smile. My family will never be the same after everything. And it hasn't been.
The attack. Ensuring his in-laws returned to an apartment where 2 killers lay in wait. Investigators quickly moved to arrest Daphne right at her Houston home. Inside her residence, they discovered detailed ledgers outlining the massive fees she charged her clients for spiritual services, including removing and applying curses. The ledger confirmed that she had been charging desperate families tens of thousands of dollars, preying on their fears and superstitions. The shadow of justice. With the conspirators in custody, the district attorney's office faced a difficult legal challenge. While they had confessions from Willie and Bobby, securing a conviction against Daphne Wright, the true puppet master who had never stepped foot inside the Arlington apartment, would require undeniable direct testimony. To ensure that the woman who ordered the executions of Long and Hong was placed behind bars for the rest of her life, prosecutors made a difficult decision. They reached an agreement with Chow Tran, offering him immunity from prosecution in exchange for his full, unvarnished testimony against Daphne, Bobby, and Willie. It was a deal with the devil, one that left the homicide detectives with a bittersweet feeling. But it was deemed necessary to bring down the primary architect of the tragedy. During Daphne's trial in August of 2019, Chow Tran took the stand. He painted a vivid picture of a family gripped by fear, paralyzed by the belief that Daphne possessed supernatural powers that could destroy their lives if they did not pay her. He claimed that his mother-in-law, Hong Le, had grown so desperate to save her family from Daphne's spiritual wrath that she had actually suggested sacrificing herself so they could collect the insurance money. Chow testified that he had left the key under the doormat, knowing that Bobby Guillory would retrieve it. The defense fiercely attacked Chow's credibility. arguing that there was no written documentation of the $280,000 debt. They argued that Chow was a greedy, willing participant who wanted the $850,000 insurance payout all to himself, and that he'd used Daphne as a convenient scapegoat. In September of 2019, the jury returned with their verdict. Daphne Wright was found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby Guillory and Willie Guillory were also held accountable for their violent actions, though Chow Tran walked away free of criminal charges, a reality that would forever sit uneasily with. The dedicated detectives who worked tirelessly to find justice for Long and Hong, the truth had finally been dragged into the light. The memory of the sweet, hard-working couple who had traveled across the world to build a life of love and family would not be forgotten. The community of Arlington healed, reminded that true fortune is never found in greed or fear, but in the quiet, honest moments of love shared with those we cherish most. The dawn call and a veteran officer's horror. The city of Arlington, Texas, in the early summer of 2012, was bathed in bright golden sunshine. Yet beneath its vibrant surface lay a complex tapestry of diverse cultures. The city was home to a large, close-knit Vietnamese immigrant community, people who had carried their rich heritage, spiritual beliefs, and hopes for a better life across the ocean to build a new future. At 7:29 on the morning of June 10, 2012, the quiet of a peaceful Sunday was shattered. Emergency dispatchers received a frantic call from a 38-year-old Vietnamese immigrant named Chow Tran. His voice over the line was trembling, hesitant, and filled with absolute dread. Chow requested a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, explaining that the family had been unable to reach them since the previous evening. When a dispatcher asked for the names of the residents, Chow struggled to spell them out through his panic. He stated his father-in-law was named Long Nguyen, who was in his early 70s, and his mother-in-law was Hong Lu. Chow explained that when his wife and teenage son went to the apartment to check on them, they noticed the front window was wide open. Inside, furniture appeared to be overturned and items were scattered. Terrified by the sight, the family remained outside, lacking the courage to step into the silent, darkened home. Officer Weller, a seasoned patrol officer, was the first to arrive at the scene. Pulling up to the apartment complex, he immediately sensed something was wrong. Welfare checks rarely occurred so early in the morning, and it was even more unusual to find an entire extended family gathered outside, their faces pale with anxiety. Stepping through the unlocked front door, Officer Weller switched on his flashlight and cautiously crossed the threshold. The living room was in complete disarray. Drawers had been ransacked. Compact discs lay scattered across the carpet, and the sofa was pushed aside. All initial signs pointed to a burglary in progress. Weller called out repeatedly, but his voice was met only by an eerie, heavy silence. He cleared the kitchen and the bathroom before stopping at the entrance of the sole bedroom. The room was dim. Weller swept his flashlight across the space. At first glance, he saw nothing unusual and assumed the elderly couple had simply gone for an early walk or were visiting relatives. But as he turned to leave, his flashlight caught a series of dark smudges on the wall next to a small, narrow closet in the corner. The marks looked like handprints, left by someone clawing at the drywall in sheer desperation. An overwhelming dread washed over Weller. Every instinct told him that something horrific lay behind that wooden closet door. He hesitated, but his duty compelled him to act. He reached out and slowly pulled the door open. Inside the cramped space, Weller froze. Huddled together on the floor were the bodies of Long Nguyen and Hong Lu. They were tightly hogtied with thick layers of gray duct tape. Their heads and mouths were wrapped completely in tape, and there was blood everywhere. In his 14 years on the force, Weller had never witnessed a scene so brutal and tragic. He stumbled back into the living room, his mind blank and his chest tight. It took him several long moments to regain his composure before he could key his radio to request A. supervisor, and the crime scene unit. Peculiar clues and a broken American dream. Hours later, Detective Stewart, a veteran homicide investigator with 21 years of experience, arrived at the apartment. He, too, was shaken by the sheer savagery of the crime. Both elderly victims had suffered severe blunt force trauma to their heads and foreheads, injuries consistent with being struck by a heavy tool like a hammer or a crowbar. However, the most disturbing detail was the immense amount of duct tape used to suffocate them. As detectives processed the scene, they uncovered several highly unusual clues that seemed to contradict the theory of a simple burglary. On the living room coffee table sat a plate containing crushed prescription pills, laid out as if to be snorted, alongside a partially smoked marijuana cigarette. More strikingly, a beer bottle in the corner of the room was wrapped in a light blue bandana. To Arlington's gang unit, a light blue bandana was a well-known symbol used by local Asian youth gangs active in extortion and protection rackets. Leaving the bandana behind seemed like a deliberate statement, a calling card to claim responsibility. Yet Detective Stewart seasoned instincts made him skeptical. The scene felt too staged, almost too perfect. Street gang members committing a robbery rarely resorted to such meticulous, personal, and absolute violence against an elderly couple who posed no threat. Stewart theorized that the entire scene had been deliberately set up to mislead the investigation. To understand the motive, police looked into the background of the victims. Long and Hong had immigrated to the United States from Vietnam in the year 2000, bringing their children to Arlington to pursue the American dream. They eventually established a commercial sewing business, placing their son-in-law, Chow Tran, in charge of operations and client relations because he spoke the most fluent English. For nearly a decade, their hard work paid off. The business secured lucrative manufacturing contracts with major global entertainment brands. They bought a home, provided for their children, and watched their dream turn into reality. However, by 2011, their fortunes took a devastating turn. Major contracts were lost, the business plummeted into debt, and financial ruin loomed. In traditional Asian culture, when a family faces consecutive, unexplained misfortunes, it is common to believe they are suffering from a curse or a streak of bad luck. In such desperate times, families often seek out a spiritual advisor to lift the curse, appease spiritual forces, and restore prosperity. The Mystical World and the Houston Advisor. Through interviews with Chow Tran, Detective Stewart learned that during the business's lowest point, Hong and Chow searched local Vietnamese language newspapers. They found an advertisement for a spiritual advisor named Daphne Wright, operating out of Houston, about 250 miles away. Daphne advertised herself as a powerful mystic capable of removing severe curses, bringing good fortune, or even placing curses on rivals if requested. Desperate for a solution, Chow traveled to Houston to meet Daphne in person. After an expensive and elaborate blessing ritual, the family felt a surge of hope that their business would soon recover. But instead of a turnaround, the family found themselves sinking deeper into debt. Over the course of a year, Daphne demanded astronomical fees for continuous rituals, running a line of credit that the desperate family struggled to pay. On June 11, 2012, autopsies conducted at the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's office revealed shocking details. While both victims had sustained heavy blunt force injuries to the head, those wounds were not the cause of death. Hong's face had been wrapped in 25 feet of duct tape, and Long's face had been wrapped in 10 feet of tape. Both had died of slow, agonizing suffocation. This confirmed that the killers did not merely wish to restrain them. Their explicit intent was a cruel and painful execution. As the investigation stalled, with DNA and fingerprints from a marijuana cigarette yielding no matches in the FBI's National Codes database, Detective Stewart received an unexpected call. An agent from a major life insurance company revealed that they had received claims for two substantial policies on Long and Hong, totaling over $1 million. The sole beneficiary of these policies was none other than Chow Tran. When brought in for questioning regarding the policies, Chow explained calmly that since the business was in his in-laws' names, the policies were intended to ensure the business could survive if either parent passed away. Chow also provided an airtight alibi for the night of the murders. He explained that the entire family had gathered at his home to celebrate Long's birthday, playing cards until past 10 o'clock in the evening, after which another relative drove the elderly couple home. Every family member cooperated fully, providing DNA and fingerprint samples. None of their profiles matched the evidence left at the crime scene. Lacking direct evidence to connect Chow or any relative to murders, the investigation went cold, remaining unresolved for 3 long years. A breakthrough from an unlikely source. The breakthrough came in the fall of 2015 from a completely unrelated incident. Police in Houston arrested a young man named Willie Guillory for stealing a horse, a felony in the state of Texas. When Willie's DNA profile was entered into the National Codes database as a convicted felon, the system triggered an immediate red alert. His DNA was an identical match to the saliva found on the partially smoked marijuana cigarette left at the Arlington crime scene in 2012. At the time of the murders, Willie was only 16 years old with no prior felony convictions, which was why his profile had never been in the system. Confronted by Arlington detectives and the undeniable forensic evidence, the young man broke down. Crying hysterically, Willie admitted to being at the apartment that night, but insisted he was only there to assist his uncle, 49-year-old Bobby Guillory. According to Willie, his uncle had been hired to carry out the hit by a woman named Daphne Wright. Bobby had provided Willie with a house key to open the apartment door. They had brought the beer bottle, the blue bandana, the crushed pills, and the marijuana to stage a fake gang-related robbery. When Long and Hong arrived home, the 2 men ambushed them. While Willie held Hong to keep her from screaming, Bobby used a heavy object to beat Long unconscious. Once the elderly couple was incapacitated, the men used duct tape to bind them securely, dragged them into the bedroom closet, and fled the scene. The mastermind and the blood contract. Detectives immediately traveled to Katy, Texas, to arrest Bobby Guillory, facing capital murder charges. Bobby realized there was no escape and confessed to his role in the crime. He explained that in 2011 he was unemployed, starving, and facing homelessness. Daphne Wright had exploited his financial desperation, offering him $10,000 to take care of her clients in Arlington. Bobby revealed that Chow Tran and Hong owed Daphne an enormous spiritual debt, which had ballooned to between $250,000 and $280,000 due to the ongoing cost of her rituals. When the family could no longer pay, Daphne learned of the substantial life insurance policies. She decided that the only way to collect her money was to have the elderly couple killed, allowing Chow to claim the insurance payouts and settle the debt. The most shocking revelation of Bobby's confession was how he obtained the key to the apartment. Bobby stated that Daphne had given him the key, telling him she received it directly from the son-in-law, Chow Tran, the witness and an incomplete justice. During a search of Daphne Wright's Houston home, detectives recovered a detailed ledger. It documented the exorbitant fees she charged vulnerable clients for her spiritual services, with amounts ranging from $10,000 to $40,000 per ritual. When questioned, Daphne remained cold, detached, and refused to speak without her attorney. Upon learning of the arrests, Chow Tran immediately severed contact with the police, communicating only through his lawyer. Financial records revealed that shortly after receiving the insurance payouts, Chow closed a sewing business and purchased an expensive new home, making several large cash transactions believed to be payments to Daphne. To secure a conviction against the mastermind, prosecutors made a controversial decision to offer Chow Tran immunity in exchange for his testimony against Daphne, Bobby, and Willie. Taking the stand in August 2019, Chow portrayed Daphne as a greedy, manipulative woman who controlled his family through fear. He claimed they believed she possessed real spiritual powers and could inflict terrible curses on them if they failed to pay. Chow even offered a bizarre explanation, claiming his mother-in-law, Hong, had voluntarily offered herself as a sacrifice to secure the insurance money and save the family from Daphne's wrath. Despite the defense's efforts to expose Chow as the true architect of the murders who wanted the insurance money for himself, the jury focused on the overwhelming evidence against the co-conspirators. In September 2019, Daphne Wright was found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory also received lengthy prison sentences for their roles in conspiracy. Though the case is legally resolved, the fact that Chow Tran remains free continues to weigh heavily on Detective Stewart and the Arlington police force. Yet they hold on to a profound belief that what is done in the dark will eventually be brought to light, and that every individual must ultimately answer for their actions. In the vibrant, diverse heart of Arlington, Texas, a beautiful tapestry of cultures weaves together to form a resilient community. Among the many bright threads in this tapestry were Long Nguyen and Hong Lee. They were a sweet, endearing elderly couple whose smiles could light up a room and whose generosity knew no bounds. They bothered no one, loved everyone, and carried with them the profound, time-honored traditions of their beautiful homeland, Vietnam. When Long and Hong immigrated to the United States in the year 2000, they brought with them their most cherished possession, their beloved family. They had decided to pick up their stakes and move across the world with their 3 children, seeking the radiant promise of the American dream. Arlington, a bustling city in Tarrant County, was the perfect place. It was a city where different cultures harmonized, home to a large, supportive Vietnamese community that had flourished since the late 1970s. Long and Hong studied the area carefully, knowing it would be a wonderful place to do business, nurture their family, and build a legacy for their grandchildren. With hope in their hearts, the couple started a commercial sewing business. They enlisted the help of their son-in-law, Chow Tran, to help manage the daily operations. Chow spoke English well and became the welcoming face of the enterprise, dealing with contractors and clients. For nearly a decade, the family poured their love and hard work into their craft. Their American dream truly blossomed when they secured a highly lucrative contract to make garments for a commercial giant, bringing the magic of Disney into their sewing rooms. They were a prominent, respected family, deeply tied to the community, proving that hard work and a positive spirit could turn dreams into reality. But in life, just as in business, there are seasons of abundance and seasons of quiet. By the year 2011, the family experienced a gentle lull. The major contracts slowed down, and the sewing machines hummed a little less frequently. Rather than give up, the family looked to their cultural roots for guidance, believing firmly that a shift in spiritual energy can invite good fortune back into their lives. They sought a traditional solution, a way to heal their business and protect their family's future. Little did they know, their innocent quest for spiritual guidance would introduce them to a cast of characters that would turn their peaceful lives into a profound mystery, ultimately uniting a veteran police force and a community in a triumphant quest for truth. Chapter 1. The Search for Good Fortune. For thousands of years, many Eastern cultures have embraced the beautiful belief in lucky spirits and guardians of prosperity. It is a gentle tradition, one that brings comfort during times of transition. When families face major life events, whether it is a shifting business, a new marriage, or a need for healing, they sometimes invite a spiritual advisor into their homes to restore balance. Long and Hong were firm believers in this old-style mysticism from their homeland. They possessed a pure, trusting innocence, believing that there were gifted people out there who could lift burdens and invite good fortune. Searching through a local Vietnamese newspaper, Chow Tran and his mother-in-law, Hong, found an advertisement for a spiritual advisor located 250 miles away in the bustling city of Houston. The advisor, a woman named Daphne Wright, advertised that she possessed a unique ability to clear away negative energy and restore prosperity. Trusting and hopeful, Chow contacted Daphne and asked for her assistance. Daphne agreed to meet Chow at her Houston home for a consultation. After a traditional ritual, the family felt incredibly uplifted, hopeful that the sewing business would turn around and that their days of worry were behind them. They believed their spiritual savior was the key to a bright new chapter. However, Daphne Wright was not the benevolent guide she claimed to be. She was, in reality, a rather cynical businesswoman who viewed spirituality through the lens of profit. Instead of offering genuine comfort, she began charging the family exorbitant fees. Long and Hong, driven by their deep love for their family and their desperate wish to see their children succeed, continued to pour their hard-earned money into Daphne's rituals. Slowly but surely, a financial burden grew. The family found themselves owing somewhere between $250,000 and $280,000. Daphne was a loud, direct woman who ran her household and her business with an iron grip. When the debt grew too large and the family struggled to pay, Daphne's true colors began to show. She was not a healer. She was a collector, and she was determined to get her money, setting in motion a bizarre and complex chain of events that would soon baffle the Arlington Police Department. Chapter 2, A Peculiar Morning. The morning of June 10, 2012, began like any other sunny Texas day, but it would soon present a perplexing puzzle for local law enforcement. At 7:29 in the morning, emergency dispatchers received a concern call from 38-year-old Chow Tran. He was asking for a welfare check on his elderly in-laws. The dispatcher, a calm and reassuring voice on the line, asked the names of the individuals. Chow spelled them out carefully. His name is Long. Last name is Wenguyen. He is 70-something right now. Chow explained that he, his wife, and his teenage son had gone to the apartment to check on the couple. They had noticed an open window and saw that things inside looked out of place, as if items had fallen down. Worried and not wanting to disturb the scene, the family decided to wait outside for professionals to arrive. An experienced Arlington police officer was quickly dispatched to the serene apartment complex. With 14 years of experience, the officer had seen many things, but right away, something felt slightly unusual about this call. Welfare checks were rarely requested this early in the morning, and seeing an entire family standing outside, waiting added an air of mystery to the crisp morning breeze. Upon entering the residence, the officer noted the telltale signs of a staged burglary. The living room was in disarray, with compact discs scattered about and furniture slightly askew. The officer called out, but only silence answered. After checking the living room, kitchen, and bathroom, the only space left was a bedroom. The officer moved methodically, focused solely on finding the beloved grandparents and ensuring they were okay. At first glance, the bedroom seemed empty. The officer thought perhaps they had simply gone out for a peaceful morning walk. But as the officer turned to leave, flashlight in hand, a set of hand smudges on the wall near a small closet caught their eye. Relying on years of careful training, the officer opened the closet door. Inside, they found Long and Hong. Tragically, the sweet couple had passed away. They had been taken from this world, victims of a carefully staged crime. The veteran officer, though momentarily rattled by the sudden loss of two beloved community members, immediately stepped back into the living room, maintaining absolute professionalism. The officer keyed the radio and requested a supervisor and the crime scene unit. Chapter 3, The Stage Puzzle. When the Arlington homicide investigators arrived, they were deeply moved by the tragic loss of such a wonderful couple. The scene presented a baffling array of clues. It initially looked like a robbery that had taken a terrible turn, but the seasoned detectives Some with 21 years of experience in homicide knew better than to take things at face value. The scene was peculiar. To the sharp eyes of the investigators, the clues seemed almost comical in their exaggeration, as if someone had watched too many crime television shows and tried to recreate them all at once. There was a plate of crushed prescription pills resting on the coffee table. Nearby lay a marijuana cigarette, but the most glaringly out-of-place item was a beer bottle wrapped neatly in a light blue bandana, sitting squarely in the middle of the room like a theatrical prop. "This looks like a calling card," one detective mused, scratching his head. Arlington did have a history of neighborhood gang activity, and the local gang unit confirmed that the light blue bandana was a known symbol. However, the detectives remained highly skeptical. Most local youth involved in such groups did not commit crimes of this nature, especially against universally adored grandparents. "It is too perfect of a crime scene," the lead investigator noted, sipping a warm cup of coffee as they analyzed the room. "It is too set up. I have every reason to believe this gang evidence is entirely staged." The team meticulously collected the peculiar evidence. They gathered the marijuana cigarette to extract a genetic profile, hoping it would lead them to the person who had orchestrated this bizarre tableau. They also collected fibers and carefully processed the area for fingerprints. The detectives were determined to solve this mystery, honoring the memory of Long and Hong by bringing the truth to light. Chapter 4, Alibis and Inquiries. Seeking answers, the investigators sat down with the grieving family. Chow Tran, speaking on behalf of the family, due to his strong grasp of English, provided a detailed timeline of the previous evening. The family had gathered to celebrate Long's birthday. It was a joyous occasion filled with laughter, good food, and a lively game of cards. Chow explained that the elderly couple had stayed at the party until about 10:30 at night, before receiving a ride home from another relative. That was the last time the family had seen them smiling and happy. When asked about potential enemies, Chow was adamant. No one could think of any reason to want this couple dead. They were sweet, they were generous, they were hardworking, and they had great ties to the community. Chow also clarified that while some families prefer to keep cash at home, Long and Hong did not keep significant amounts of money in the apartment. He mentioned that the sewing business had been struggling and that they had sought spiritual help, believing the business might be clouded by negative energy. The detectives checked the family's alibis thoroughly. Everyone had been together playing cards, and their stories matched perfectly. Furthermore, when the laboratory returned the genetic testing results from the marijuana cigarette found at the scene, the profile did not match Chow, any family members, or anyone in the National Criminal Database. Adding another layer to the mystery, the detectives received a routine phone call from a major insurance company. Long and Hong held a substantial life insurance policy, valued at over $1 million, intended to protect the family business in case of tragedy. Chow Tran was listed as one of the primary beneficiaries. When asked about this, Chow reasonably explained that the policy was a standard measure to ensure the sewing business could survive any unforeseen losses. Despite conducting over 50 interviews with family members, neighbors, and business associates, the police found no solid leads. For over 3 years, the case grew quiet, resting safely in the hands of detectives who refused to forget the kind elderly couple from Vietnam. Chapter 5, The Absurdity of the Horse Thief. Sometimes, the universe has a highly humorous way of delivering justice. The break in this deeply complex case did not come from a dramatic undercover operation or a high-speed chase. It came, quite surprisingly, from a stolen horse. In the year 2015, a young man named Willie Guillory made a remarkably foolish decision in the city of Houston. He decided to steal a horse. In the great state of Texas, stealing livestock is a serious felony offense. When Willie was arrested for his unexpected foray into modern rustling, standard procedure required him to submit a genetic sample to the national database. Willie had just turned an adult Back in 2012, at the time of the Arlington mystery, Willie had been only 16 years old. Because he was a minor with no prior serious offenses, his genetic profile had not been in the system when the detectives first tested the marijuana cigarette. But now, thanks to his inexplicable desire to steal a horse, Willie's information was entered into the system. Almost immediately, bells rang in the Arlington Police Department. The national database matched Willie's profile perfectly to the evidence left on the coffee table 3 years prior. On October 17, 2015, detectives brought Willie into the station. Initially, they spoke to him about his parole violations regarding the horse. Willie confidently denied ever being in Arlington. "I promise you, I was nowhere around Arlington," Willie insisted. The detective smiled gently. "Well, that is why we are going to check your genetic profile again, because the science tells us you were. Sitting right there in that apartment." When the detective patiently explained how genetic science worked and how they had found his exact profile on the staged evidence, Willie's tough exterior melted away completely. He broke down and confessed. "Yes, I was there," Willie admitted, "but I did not do it alone." Chapter 6, A Tale of Two Scammers. Willie unraveled a story that sounded like a script from a bizarre movie. He explained that back in 2012, his uncle, 49-year-old Bobby Guillory, had recruited him for a job. Bobby told his young nephew that they were going to drive 3 hours north to Arlington to take care of some business. According to Willie, his uncle had a key to the apartment. Their master plan was to stage a break-in and make it look like a local gang had committed a terrible crime. The plan my uncle came up with was to throw stuff around, set up evidence to make it look like thugs ended up committing the crime, Willie confessed. "We had beer bottles, a blue bandana, pills, marijuana. My uncle actually left the remains of a marijuana cigarette. He smoked a little bit of it and left it there. It was a brilliantly flawed plan. By leaving the staged evidence to throw the police off the trail, Bobby had inadvertently provided the exact clue the police needed to solve the case." Willie revealed the true mastermind behind this theatrical plot. Daphne Wright, the spiritual advisor from Houston. Bobby had met Daphne through a friend. At the time, Bobby was unemployed, desperate, and struggling to make ends meet. Daphne, recognizing a malleable participant, offered Bobby $10,000 to travel to Arlington and resolve her debt collection problem permanently. Daphne was furious that Chow and Hong owed her money for her spiritual services. When she discovered they had a massive life insurance policy, her greed took over. She orchestrated the entire event, hoping to force the family to collect the insurance money so she could finally be paid her exorbitant fees. Armed with this incredible new information, the detectives traveled to Katy, Texas, in December 2015 to speak with Bobby Guillory. At first, Bobby was quiet, but when presented with a search warrant for his own genetic information, he realized the puzzle was complete. Bobby confessed, corroborating his nephew's story. He painted a picture of Daphne as a spiritual loan shark, a woman who controlled those around her with loud demands and false promises of magical prosperity. She was the mastermind behind this whole entire deal, Bobby explained. She dictated everything that was supposed to go down. But Bobby dropped one final, shocking twist into the laps of the investigators. When asked how Daphne had acquired the key to the Arlington apartment, Bobby pointed a finger directly at the family's spokesperson. "Chow Tran," Bobby said. Chapter 7, The Mastermind and the Truth. The detectives were blindsided by the accusation. They had developed a cordial relationship with Chow over the years of the investigation. To think he might be involved was a heavy realization. When they attempted to speak with Chow again, he immediately directed them to his attorney. Before diving into Chow's potential involvement, the team focused on the woman pulling the strings. In August 2016, detectives arrived at Daphne Wright's comfortable Houston home. Daphne was exactly as Bobby described, loud, direct, and completely in charge of her subservient husband, Howard. When asked about her business with Chow, Daphne was cold and evasive. She confirmed Chow was a client, but refused to detail the money he owed her. "What happens if someone does not pay you?" a detective asked. Daphne looked right back, her eyes narrowing. "Oh, they will pay." Despite her tough facade, the police had gathered enough evidence from the Guillories to secure an arrest warrant. During a search at Daphne's home, they discovered a hidden ledger. The book detailed her outrageous fees for supposedly removing curses and applying blessings. She was charging vulnerable people $10, $20, $30, and even $40,000 for simple conversations and imaginary services. The detectives were astounded by the sheer audacity of her greed. Daphne's husband, Howard, appeared genuinely clueless about his wife's covert operations, maintaining her innocence and insisting he knew absolutely nothing about the Arlington incident. Daphne herself requested a lawyer and refused to confess, believing she could outsmart the justice system. To secure a conviction against a manipulator like Daphne, the prosecutors knew they needed inside information. They needed Chow Tran to testify. Financial records revealed that since his in-law's passing, Chow had purchased a new home and abandoned the family's sewing business. The prosecutors approached Chow with an offer of immunity in exchange for his full, unvarnished testimony about Daphne's operation. Sitting safely beside his lawyer, Chow spun a tale of fear and manipulation. He claimed that Daphne had essentially taken control of his family's mind. He stated that his mother-in-law, terrified of Daphne's supposed mystical powers and the dark curses she threatened to unleash, had voluntarily offered herself as a sacrifice so the family could collect the insurance and pay off the spiritual debt. The detectives found this claim utterly ludicrous. No one believed that the sweet, joyous Hong Li would orchestrate such a bizarre end. The defense team during the trial would later argue fiercely that Chow simply wanted the $150,000 payout for himself, and that he had willingly participated, even leaving the apartment key under the mat for Daphne's hired men. However, the justice system often requires difficult compromises to catch the biggest fish. In August 2019, Daphne Wright finally faced a jury. Chow's testimony successfully painted her as the greedy, manipulative architect of the crime. Despite the defense's best efforts to discredit Chow and point out the lack of written documentation for the enormous debt, the jury saw through Daphne's facade. In September 2019, the jury returned their verdict. Daphne Wright was found guilty of her crimes and received life in prison without the possibility of parole. Her reign of spiritual extortion was officially over. Epilogue: Light in the Darkness. While the legal outcome left some investigators frustrated that Chow Tran was not charged, they found deep solace in knowing that the primary instigators, Daphne and her hired accomplices, were no longer a threat to society. The lead detective, reflecting on the arduous 7-year journey, noted with calm certainty, "What is done in the dark will always come to light. I thoroughly believe they will all eventually have to answer for their actions." The story of Long Nguyen and Hong Li remains a poignant reminder of profound love of family and the lengths to which people will go to achieve the American dream. Their memories are not defined by the bizarre actions of a few greedy individuals, but by the beautiful legacy they built, the vibrant community they loved, and the joyful nights spent playing cards surrounded by laughter. This complex case stands as a powerful educational testament to the dedication of modern law enforcement. It highlights the importance of critical thinking, the absolute marvel of forensic science, and the humorous reality that sometimes justice rides on a stolen horse. It serves as a gentle warning to always seek practical, grounded solutions to life's challenges, and to cherish the real magic in the world, the enduring strength of truth, community, and unconditional love. The morning sun rose gently over the quiet suburban streets of Arlington, Texas, on June 10th, 2012. The air was warm, carrying the promise of a peaceful Sunday. The kind of day usually reserved for a family breakfast and slow walks in the neighborhood. The city was a beautiful tapestry of different cultures, a place where people from all over the world came to build a better life. Yet, beneath this tranquil surface, a mystery was about to unfold that would test the resolve of seasoned law enforcement officers and challenge the community's understanding of trust. At 7:29 in the morning, the Emergency Dispatch Center received a call that shattered the weekend calm. The operator, trained to handle panic with a steady voice, answered promptly. On the other end of the line was a 38-year-old Vietnamese immigrant named Chow Tran. His voice trembled with a palpable anxiety as he asked for a welfare check on his elderly in-laws. The operator asked for their names to log the information into the system. Chow spelled it out carefully, stating his father-in-law was named Long Nguyen, noting the spelling letter by letter, and estimating his age to be in his early 70s. He explained that his wife, his son, and himself were standing outside the apartment of his in-laws. They had sent a teenage boy to knock on the door, but there was no answer. Looking through a window, they had seen that things were knocked over, and a deep sense of dread had prevented them from entering. They needed help. Officer Weller, a dedicated public servant with 14 years of experience, was dispatched immediately. Because it was so early in the morning, a welfare check was slightly unusual, but Weller approached the situation with the calm professionalism that defined his career. When he arrived at the apartment complex, he noticed the entire family standing outside. They looked terrified, huddled together in the warm morning air. It was clear that something was profoundly wrong. Entering the residence, Officer Weller immediately noticed the disarray. Furniture was moved, compact discs were scattered across the floor, and the living room looked as though a sudden storm had passed through it. He called out, his voice echoing in the empty spaces, but there was no reply. He checked the living room, the kitchen, and the bathroom. Everything was silent. The only room left to check was the primary bedroom. As he stepped into the bedroom, his initial sweep revealed nothing out of the ordinary. His primary focus was simply finding the elderly couple. Hoping they had perhaps gone for a morning walk and forgotten to lock up, he was just about to turn around and leave the room, relieved that no one was hurt, when his flashlight beam caught something unusual. There were smudges on the wall, right next to a very small closet door. Every instinct honed over his long career whispered a warning. He hesitated for a moment, sensing the gravity of what might lie behind that door. But duty compelled him forward. He opened the closet door and found Long Nguyen and his wife, Hong Lee. They had passed away. The scene was heartbreaking. The couple had been bound with duct tape in a manner that spoke of a deep, tragic cruelty. In that split second, Officer Weller knew he was standing at the edge of profound mystery. He stepped backward, moving out of the bedroom and into the living room. Taking a deep breath to steady his racing heart, he reached for his radio, bypassing any abbreviations or jargon, and clearly requested a supervisor and a crime scene unit. When the homicide investigators arrived, including a veteran detective who had been on the force for 21 years, they were equally taken aback. The veteran detective noted that this was one of the most severe cases he had ever encountered. The evidence suggested a struggle had begun the moment the couple walked through their front door. Yet, despite the sadness of the discovery, the officers shared a quiet, unbreakable determination. They would find the truth. They would bring justice to this family. Chapter 2, The Dream and the Struggle. To understand the tragedy, the detectives knew they had to understand the lives of Long Nguyen and Hong Lee. The couple had immigrated to the United States from Vietnam in the year 2000, bringing with them a rich heritage, time-honored traditions, and a deep, unconditional love for their family. They were a sweet, generous couple who never bothered anyone. In their community, they were beloved, known for their kindness and their bright smiles. They had chosen to settle in Arlington, Texas, a city that boasted a large and vibrant Vietnamese community. The area had become a haven for immigrants looking to build businesses, raise families, and pursue the American dream. Long and Hong saw a beautiful opportunity to create a lasting legacy for their 3 children and their grandchildren. Upon arriving in Texas, the hard-working couple started a commercial sewing business. They enlisted the help of their son-in-law, Chow Tran, to manage the operations. Because Chow spoke the most fluent English in the family, he became the public face of the enterprise, dealing with contractors and navigating the complex world of American commerce. For nearly a decade, their dedication paid off handsomely. Their American dream materialized when they secured a highly lucrative contract to manufacture garments for a massive entertainment corporation. However, business is often as unpredictable as the weather. By the year 2011, the family's good fortune began to wane. They lost their major corporate contract, and the sewing business started to decline rapidly. The financial pressure mounted, casting a shadow over the family's once bright future. In many cultures, sudden misfortune is sometimes viewed through a spiritual lens. The family, holding firmly to the ancient beliefs of their homeland, began to suspect that their string of bad luck was the result of a negative spiritual influence, a curse for thousands of years. Traditional mysticism suggested that spiritual advisors could petition forces of prosperity and protection to heal businesses and restore harmony. Desperate to save the legacy they had built, Chow Tran and his mother-in-law, Hong Lee, searched for a solution. While browsing through a local Vietnamese newspaper, they stumbled upon an advertisement for a spiritual advisor located 250 miles away in Houston, Texas. The advisor claimed she had the power to remove bad luck, lift curses, and restore financial prosperity. Believing this was the answer to their prayers, they reached out for help, unknowingly opening the door to a tragic deception. Chapter 3: The Illusion of Evidence. Back at the apartment, the crime scene unit was meticulously cataloging every detail. The detectives were initially puzzled by the sheer aggression of the crime. Robberies did not typically escalate to such extremes unless there was a deeply personal motive or a calculated plan. As they combed through the scattered belongings, the investigators found several items that seemed oddly out of place. On the coffee table rested a plate of crushed prescription pills, arranged as if prepared for consumption. Nearby lay the remains of a marijuana cigarette. But the most glaring piece of evidence was a blue cloth bandana wrapped deliberately around a glass beer bottle. In Arlington, certain local groups were known to use specific colors like light blue to mark their territory or claim responsibility for illicit activities. The detectives consulted with the specialized gang unit, who confirmed the color's significance. It appeared to be a calling card. However, the seasoned homicide detectives possessed a healthy skepticism. The clues felt too obvious, too neatly arranged. Gang members typically avoided leaving such blatant, theatrical evidence at a scene, especially one of this magnitude. It was as if someone had watched a television show about criminals and tried to recreate it. The investigators theorized that the scene had been intentionally staged to mislead them. Despite their doubts about the gang theory, the detectives treated every piece of evidence like gold. They carefully collected the marijuana cigarette to extract a deoxyribonucleic acid profile. They took hair fibers, swab surfaces, and meticulously processed the duct tape for fingerprints. They were hopeful that modern science would cut through theatrical deception and point them toward the real perpetrators. Chapter 4: Alibis and Hidden Fortunes. The investigation naturally progressed to interviewing the family members. Given the language barrier with some of the older relatives, Chow Tran acted as the primary spokesperson. Detective Stewart sat down with the 38-year-old man, observing his demeanor carefully. Chow explained that on the evening of June 9th, the entire family had gathered to celebrate Long Nguyen's birthday. It was supposed to be a joyous occasion. According to Chow, his in-laws arrived at his house around 4:30 in the afternoon. They ate together, laughed, and played card games until shortly after 10 o'clock at night. Another family member then gave the elderly couple a ride home. That was the last time they were seen alive. When asked about potential motives, Chow maintained that his in-laws had no enemies. They did not keep large sums of cash at home, and their struggling sewing business made them unlikely targets for a lucrative robbery. Chow cooperated fully, providing timelines and answering every question without hesitation. He and the rest of the family provided genetic samples and fingerprints to be compared against the evidence found at the scene. With solid alibis and cooperative behavior, the family members did not immediately appear as suspects. But routine phone calls soon shifted the detective's perspective. An insurance company contacted the police department to report a massive life insurance policy held by the deceased couple. The policy was valued at over $1 million, and one of the primary beneficiaries was none other than Chow Tran. When questioned about the substantial financial safety net, Chow explained that the policies were purchased years ago to ensure the business could continue if a key family member passed away. While the explanation was plausible, the existence of such a large sum of money introduced a powerful potential motive into the investigation. Days turned into weeks, and the laboratory results finally returned. To the immense disappointment of the investigative team, the genetic profile extracted from a marijuana cigarette did not match Chow Tran, any family member, or any individual currently registered in the combined deoxyribonucleic acid index system, the national database managed by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The database only housed profiles of adults convicted of felony offenses. If the perpetrator was a minor or someone with a clean record, their genetic blueprint would remain invisible. The detectives had cast a wide net, interviewing over 50 people, including neighbors, extended family, and business associates. They left no stone unturned, yet the lead slowly evaporated. For 3 long years, the case went entirely cold. But the detectives never forgot Long Nguyen and Hong Lee. They simply waited for science and time to align. Chapter 5: The Horse Thief and the Science of Justice. Justice has a curious way of revealing itself, often through the most unexpected avenues. In October 2015, over 3 years after the tragic loss of the elderly couple, a bizarre incident breathed new life into the stagnant investigation. Hundreds of miles away, a young man named Willie Guillory made a foolish decision. He stole a horse. In the state of Texas, stealing livestock is a serious felony offense. When Willie was apprehended for the theft, he was processed into the criminal justice system as an adult. He was swabbed, and his genetic profile was uploaded into the national database. Willie was 16 years old in 2012. Because he was a juvenile at the time of the murders, his genetic material had not been on file when the detectives first searched the database. But now, as an adult with felony conviction, his information triggered a system-wide alert. The computer servers silently matched his profile to the biological material left on the marijuana cigarette at the Arlington crime scene. On October 17, 2015, Arlington detectives brought Willie Guillory in for questioning. Initially, they approached him regarding a violation of his parole, keeping their true intentions hidden. When they finally steered the conversation toward the events in Arlington 3 years prior, Willie was defensive. He swore he had never been to the city and insisted he had no involvement. The detectives, employing a brilliant mix of patience and educational strategy, gently explained the irrefutable nature of genetic science. They explained how human biology leaves an invisible but permanent signature. When confronted with the undeniable fact that his unique biological code was found inside the apartment, Willie's tough exterior crumbled. He broke down in tears and confessed. Willie admitted that he was present at the scene, but he insisted he did not act alone. He pointed the finger at his uncle, a 49-year-old man named Bobby Guillory. According to Willie, life had left him with few choices, and when his uncle commanded him to help a job in Arlington, he felt compelled to obey. Willie confirmed the detective's long-held theory. The crime scene was entirely staged. The plan had been to scatter items, knock over furniture, and leave behind the blue bandana, the pills, and the beer bottle to create the illusion of a random gang-related attack. Willie confessed that he had smoked a portion of the marijuana cigarette to add to the authenticity of the scene, inadvertently leaving behind the very evidence that would secure his downfall. The young man described a harrowing sequence of events. But what struck the detectives most was the revelation of a larger conspiracy. Willie claimed that neither he nor his uncle had any personal vendetta against the elderly couple. They were simply hired hands. The entire plot was orchestrated by a woman Willie had met through his uncle, a spiritual advisor from Houston named Daphne Wright. Chapter 6: The Spiritual Trap. The pieces of the puzzle were finally snapping together. The detectives now knew this was not a random act of violence, nor was it a gang initiation. It was a calculated murder for a higher plot rooted in greed and manipulation. They turned their attention to building a comprehensive profile of Daphne Wright. Daphne was a 44-year-old woman living in Houston, married with 3 daughters. She presented herself to the community as a powerful spiritual advisor. For a hefty fee, she promised to turn struggling businesses around, banish bad luck, and bring prosperity to families facing hardship. She was a dominant personality, charismatic and loud, effectively ruling her household and commanding absolute obedience from her clients. When detectives reached out to Chow Tran to ask if he knew Daphne Wright, his reaction was highly suspicious. Instead of cooperating, as he had in the past, Chow immediately directed the investigators to his attorney. The sudden wall of legal defense suggested that Chow knew the net was tightening. To bridge the gap between Chow and Daphne, the detectives needed to speak with the middleman, Bobby Guillory. In December of 2015, they traveled to Katy, Texas, to apprehend the 52-year-old uncle. Bobby had no prior criminal history. When faced with the overwhelming evidence, including a search warrant for his own biological sample, Bobby surrendered to the weight of his guilt. During his interrogation, Bobby expressed deep remorse, claiming he had been desperately poor and hungry in 2011 when he first met Daphne. Daphne recognized his vulnerability and offered him $10,000 to carry out the hit. Bobby revealed the dark truth about Daphne's spiritual business. She was functioning as a mystical loan shark. Bobby explained that despite Daphne's expensive rituals, Long Nguyen and Hong Lee's business never improved. They remained trapped in financial distress. Yet, pushed by fear and a deeply ingrained belief in Daphne's claimed spiritual authority, Chow Tran had continued to purchase her services on credit. The debt had ballooned to an astonishing sum, somewhere between $250,000 and $280,000. When Daphne demanded payment, she discovered that the family was virtually bankrupt. However, she also learned of the massive life insurance policies. Seeing an opportunity for a massive payout, Daphne orchestrated a plan to eliminate the elderly couple so the family could collect the insurance money and settle their supernatural debt. When detectives asked Bobby how he and Willie gained access to the apartment without forcing the door, Bobby provided a shocking answer. He claimed that Daphne had given them a key. And when asked where Daphne acquired the key, Bobby stated firmly that it came from Chow Tran. Chapter 7: The Betrayal and the Trial. The detectives were stunned by the depths of betrayal. They executed an arrest warrant for Daphne right at her Houston home. During the search of her residence, investigators uncovered meticulously kept ledgers detailing her spiritual fees. The documents showed she was charging desperate people tens of thousands of dollars for her alleged services. Daphne, however, remained silent, demanding her lawyer and refusing to cooperate. Meanwhile, investigators scrutinized Chow Tran's financial records. They discovered that following the tragic passing of his in-laws and the subsequent insurance payout, Chow had purchased a new home and permanently closed a family sewing business. The circumstantial evidence strongly suggested he was a willing participant in the scheme to sacrifice his elders for financial gain. However, the legal system requires concrete proof. To ensure the conviction of the mastermind, Daphne Wright, the prosecution faced a difficult moral and strategic dilemma. They needed insider testimony to prove that Daphne had hired the hitmen and orchestrated the plot. To secure this testimony, they offered Chow Tran immunity from prosecution in exchange for his full cooperation on the witness. Stunt, it was a deal with the devil, but a necessary step to dismantle the criminal enterprise. With his attorney present, Chow spun a bizarre narrative. He claimed that Daphne had exerted an overwhelming psychological control over his mind and body. He alleged that it was actually his mother-in-law, Hong Lee, who had volunteered to be sacrificed to save the family from Daphne's spiritual wrath. The investigators found this claim utterly ludicrous, recognizing it as a desperate attempt by Chow to minimize his own monstrous greed. Still, his testimony was the key to unlocking a conviction. In August of 2019, Daphne Wright's trial began. The courtroom became a theater where science, human frailty, and the pursuit of justice collided. Chow took the stand, portraying Daphne as a ruthless extortionist. The defense fiercely attacked Chow's credibility, pointing out the lack of any digital communication, proving the enormous debt, and arguing that Chow himself was the true mastermind who pocketed the $850,000 payout. Despite the defense's efforts to shift the blame entirely onto Chow, the jury carefully weighed the evidence. They considered the testimonies of Willie and Bobby Guillory, the biological evidence, the ledgers found in Daphne's home, and the tragic sequence of events. In September of 2019, the jury returned their verdict. Daphne Wright was found guilty of capital murder. She was sentenced to spend the remainder of her life in prison, without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory also faced severe consequences for their actions, ensuring they could no longer pose a threat to society. Chapter 8, A Legacy of Light. The resolution of the case brought a profound sense of relief to the Arlington Police Department and the local community, though it carried a bittersweet undertone. It was immensely frustrating for the dedicated detectives that Chow Tran, shielded by his immunity deal, walked away free. Yet, the investigators held on to a powerful, enduring belief. Truth eventually finds its way into the light, and those who commit wrongdoings ultimately face the consequences of their actions, whether in a courtroom or through the relentless weight of their own conscience. The story of Long Nguyen and Hong Lee is not solely defined by the tragic circumstances of their passing. It is a story of incredible resilience, a testament to a beautiful couple who crossed oceans to build a dream. They were a prominent, respected Asian family whose legacy was one of hard work, generosity, and deep devotion to their community. This complex investigation showcased the brilliance of modern forensics, proving that the tiniest invisible trace of biological material can bridge the gap of years and miles to deliver justice. It highlighted the unwavering dedication of public servants who refuse to let a case remain cold. Most importantly, it serves as an educational reminder of the dangers of exploitation, urging communities to rely on logic, mutual support, and true financial counsel rather than falling prey to those who peddle fear under the guise of mysticism. While the shadows of the past can never be fully erased, the light of justice shines brightly in Arlington. The memory of the gentle couple endures, inspiring those who knew them to live with kindness and to cherish the bonds of family, proving that love and truth will always outlast deceit and darkness. The morning sun rose over the city of Arlington, Texas, casting a warm, golden glow across the quiet suburban neighborhoods that defined this vibrant corner of Tarrant County. It was a place where dreams were built and cultures converged, creating a peaceful community where everyone worked hard to secure a bright future for their children. Among the many families who had found a home here, the local community held deep values of family unity, respect, and mutual support. Neighbors looked out for one another. Businesses thrived on trust, and the gentle rhythm of daily life brought a sense of shared harmony to everyone who lived there. Among the most respected members of this close-knit neighborhood were an elderly gentleman named Long Nguyen and his gentle wife, Hong Lu, having traveled to the United States many years prior to build their lives anew. They brought with them a profound dedication to their heritage and a deep love for their family. They were a bright example of kindness and perseverance, always greeting others with warm smiles and offering assistance whenever someone needed a helping hand. To the entire neighborhood, they were a sweet, peaceful couple who never caused any trouble and focused entirely on creating a positive future for their children and grandchildren. Their family commercial sewing business was a heart of their daily activities, a collaborative effort where everyone contributed. They spent long, productive hours working alongside their son-in-law, Chow Tran, who helped manage the daily operations and communication with various local partners. Chow was an articulate 38-year-old man who took great pride in representing the family enterprise. For a long time, the business flourished, securing notable contracts that filled the family with immense hope. However, when economic conditions changed and those major agreements concluded, the business began to face significant challenges. During times of difficulty, people often looked to traditional beliefs for guidance, comfort, and a sense of direction. For generations, traditional cultural practices emphasized seeking harmony, peace, and spiritual balance to navigate the natural trials of life, hoping to invite positive energy back into their lives and restore the success of their commercial sewing workshop. Chow Tran and his mother-in-law, Hong Lu, decided to consult a spiritual advisor named Daphne Wright, who operated out of a residence located in the city of Houston. Daphne advertised services aimed at helping families overcome obstacles, lifting negative influences, and welcoming good fortune back into their homes and enterprises. Eager to support the family and protect the legacy they had built, Chow traveled to Houston for a consultation. He participated in traditional rituals designed to foster hope and peace, returned to Arlington with a renewed sense of optimism that their difficulties would soon transform into positive achievements. However, as the months passed, the situation grew more complex. On the morning of June 10, 2012, at approximately 7:29 in the morning, emergency services received a call requesting a welfare check at the residence of the elderly couple. Chow Tran explained that family members had gathered outside the apartment and were concerned because there was no response at the door, though an open window suggested someone should be home. Officer Weller arrived quickly at the location, observing concerned family waiting patiently outside. Upon entering the apartment to ensure everyone was safe, the officer noticed that the rooms were in complete disarray, showing clear signs of a serious disturbance. While checking the residence, Officer Weller located the elderly couple inside a small bedroom closet. They had been tightly bound with heavy adhesive tape and were completely unresponsive. The responding officer immediately requested the assistance of a supervisor and the specialized team to secure the location and begin a thorough investigation. When the primary investigators arrived at the scene, they observed the severe nature of the incident. The room showed clear signs of a struggle, with household items and compact discs scattered across the floor. In the living room, detectives discovered several objects, including a blue bandana wrapped around a bottle and other materials that initially suggested the involvement of local youth gangs known to operate in the wider region. However, experienced investigators immediately felt a sense of skepticism, realizing that the arrangement of the items appeared unusual, almost as if someone had deliberately tried to create the appearance of a random burglary. The specialized team carefully gathered all potential physical evidence, including hair fibers, prints, and materials from the scene, to establish a clear profile of whoever had entered the apartment. Meanwhile, Detectives conducted detailed interviews with the family members to understand the background of the sweet and hardworking couple. Chow Tran acted as the main spokesperson for the family, explaining that the night before the incident, they had all gathered to celebrate his father-in-law's birthday, enjoying a wonderful evening together until approximately 10 o'clock at night. A detailed review by the medical examiner confirmed that the gentle couple had tragically passed away due to suffocation resulting from the restrictive layers of tape applied to their faces. This revelation strengthened the determination of the investigators to uncover the complete truth behind this tragic event, ensuring that the peaceful values of the community would be upheld. As the days progressed, a routine notification from an insurance company introduced a new development to the case. Investigators learned that the elderly couple held substantial life insurance policies totaling a significant amount, close to $1 million, with Chow Tran designated as a major beneficiary. When asked about this detail, Chow explained that the policies were originally established to protect the continuity of the commercial sewing business and provide long-term security for the grandchildren. He also provided a verified account of his activities on the night of the incident, explaining that the family had remained together playing cards until late in the evening. The laboratory analysis of the physical evidence collected from the scene did not reveal an immediate match with any existing profiles in the national database, because the database primarily recorded individuals with prior major adult convictions. Investigators suspected that the person responsible might have been a minor at the time, meaning their profile would not yet be registered, with no further immediate leads. The investigation continued quietly for more than 2 years as detectives diligently looked for new information. The breakthrough occurred in October 2015 when a young man named Willie Guillory was arrested in Houston for an unrelated felony offense involving a horse. Because a felony charge required the collection and submission of genetic markers to the national database, Willie's profile was officially recorded for the first time. The system immediately identified a precise match with the physical evidence retrieved from the Arlington apartment 3 years earlier. Detectives immediately brought the 19-year-old Willie Guillory in for questioning. Confronted with the undeniable scientific data, the young man broke down and provided a complete account of what had occurred. He confessed that in the summer of 2012, when he was 16 years old, his uncle, Bobby Guillory, had asked him to assist with a task in Arlington. Willie explained that his uncle possessed a key to the apartment, allowing him to enter easily and deliberately arrange the items to make the incident look like the work of a random street gang. Willie further revealed that the entire plan had been organized by Daphne Wright, the spiritual advisor from Houston. According to Willie, Daphne had expressed intense anger over an outstanding financial debt, stating clearly that if the funds were not provided, she wanted the couple removed permanently. Following this critical revelation, investigators quickly located the 52-year-old Bobby Guillory in Katy, Texas. In December of 2015, facing the serious charges against him, Bobby also chose to cooperate fully, explaining that he had been experiencing extreme financial distress at the time and had been promised a payment of $10,000 by Daphne Wright to carry out the instruction. Bobby explained that the financial relationship between the family and the spiritual advisor had grown increasingly strained. Chow Tran and his mother-in-law had continued to request Daphne's services over a long period, running up an informal credit balance that eventually grew to between $250,000 and $280,000. When Daphne demanded full payment, the family was unable to produce the cash, leading to a discussion about utilizing the substantial life insurance policies to cover the total amount. Most significantly, Bobby asserted that the key to the residence had been obtained through Chow Tran. With these detailed accounts, detectives turned their full focus toward Daphne Wright. At her Houston residence, investigators discovered a structured home where Daphne exercised significant influence over daily affairs. A thorough search of property revealed meticulous business records indicating that she charged substantial sums for her traditional services, while her husband maintained that he had absolutely no knowledge of any improper activities. Daphne remained quiet, choosing to communicate only through her legal representative. To ensure a strong and complete presentation for the court, prosecutors realized they needed direct testimony regarding the origin of the plan. They offered an agreement of immunity to Chow Tran in exchange for his full and truthful account of the events during the upcoming trial. Chow Tran explained that his family felt an overwhelming sense of psychological pressure, believing that Daphne possessed powerful spiritual capabilities that could bring great misfortune upon them if the debt remained unpaid. He claimed that his mother-in-law, out of an intense desire to protect the rest of the family from financial ruin, had initially suggested sacrificing her own well-being so the insurance proceeds could satisfy the outstanding balance. Chow stated that Daphne had strongly supported the idea, expanding the plan to include both elders to ensure the total insurance payout would completely cover the outstanding debt. He admitted that he had placed a key in a designated location outside the apartment for the individuals to retrieve. In August of 2019, the formal trial of Daphne Wright began. Chow Tran presented his detailed testimony, describing the intense financial demands and the atmosphere of pressure that had developed over the preceding years. The defense team strongly challenged his statements, arguing that Chow had acted out of personal motivation to secure the insurance funds for himself and had utilized a narrative of spiritual influence to shift responsibility away from his own actions. The members of the jury evaluated all the testimony, the financial documents, and the unique cultural context presented throughout the proceedings. In September of 2019, the jury returned a verdict of guilty on the charges of capital murder. Daphne Wright received a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole, bringing a definitive legal resolution to the case. The entire account served as a profound reminder to the community about the vital importance of transparency, honesty, and mutual care during times of difficulty. It highlighted the value of seeking positive, open solutions to life's challenges, and reinforced the strength of a neighborhood dedicated to justice and the well-being of every resident. The memory of the sweet, hard-working elderly couple remained a cherished part of the local community, inspiring everyone to live with integrity, support one another with kindness, and protect the peaceful harmony of their shared home.